Good Monday morning. Just 2 days this week, and since it is the 400th anniversary of the Pilgrim landing, I really wanted to do something pilgrimy. So today I will read this story to you. If you don't want to hear me read it, you're welcome to read it to yourself. And I will let you do that. That's fine. But I know some kids struggle a little bit with reading, and so you can follow along as I read it to you. The Pilgrims were a group of English settlers who left Europe in search of religious freedom in the Americas. They established the Plymouth colony in 1620. 2020 is the 400-year anniversary of the Pilgrims' landing. The Pilgrims traveled to America in search of a new way of life. Many of the Pilgrims were part of a religious group called Separatists. They were called this because they wanted to separate from the Church of England and worship God in their own way. They were not allowed to do this in England, where they were persecuted and sometimes put in jail for their beliefs. Other Pilgrims were hoping to find adventure or a better life in the New World. The Pilgrims initially set sail aboard two ships, the Speedwell and the Mayflower. However, not long after leaving England, the Speedwell began to leak, and the Pilgrims had to return to port. Once back at port, they crowded as many of the passengers as possible onto the Mayflower and set sail once again for America on September 16th, 1620. As you can see, this was really a late time to be going to the Americas. Usually they tried to leave in March so that they could get a crop in and not hit America when the weather was bad. They managed to fit 102 total passengers on the Mayflower, but they had to leave 20 of the original Speedwell passengers behind. In addition to the 102 passengers, there were 25 to 30 crewmen on board the ship. The voyage across the Atlantic Ocean was long and difficult. The extra people on the ship made the trip even worse. They ran out of fresh water, and many people became sick. Storms also hit the ship very hard, causing one of the main beams to crack. 2 people died during the voyage. At one point, they considered turning back, but decided to stick it out. After 2 long months at sea, the Pilgrims finally reached land on November 9th. The captain of the Mayflower realized that they were far north of Virginia, which was their original destination. Because they were no longer in British territory, they needed to make an agreement on how issues would be settled and how the colony would be run. It is believed that William Bradford wrote a document modeled after the English Magna Carta. They signed this document that is today called the Mayflower Compact. The compact declared that the colonists were loyal to the King of England, that they were Christians who served God, that they would make fair and just laws, and that they would each work for the good of the colony. The Mayflower Compact was signed by 41 of the Pilgrim men. The women were not allowed to sign. The men also voted John Carver to be the first governor of the colony. After arriving in America, the Pilgrims searched the coast of New England for a good place to build a settlement. They eventually found a location called Plymouth. It had a calm harbor for their ship, a river for fresh water, and flat lands where they could plant crops. It was here that they built their village and established the Plymouth colony. The Pilgrims were happy to finally be in America, but things didn't get any easier for them. They were not prepared for the cold winter. They quickly built a main common house and then began to build small houses for each of the families. For a time, some people slept on the Mayflower. Many people got sick and died over that first winter. At one point, there were only around 6 people well enough to continue working. By the end of the winter, only 47 out of the original 102 settlers were still alive. Governor John Carver died that spring, and William Bradford was elected the new governor. The Native Americans that lived in the same area as Plymouth Colony were the Wampanoag peoples. The chief of the Wampanoag, Massasoit, made contact with the Pilgrims. They established a peace treaty and agreed to trade for animal furs. One Wampanoag man, Squanto, had traveled to Europe and could speak some English. He agreed to stay with the Pilgrims and teach them how to survive. He taught them how to plant corn, where to hunt and fish, and how to survive through the winter. Without Squanto's help, the colony probably wouldn't have survived. The Pilgrims held a feast after their first harvest in 1621. They invited some of the local Wampanoag people to join them. This feast is sometimes called the First Thanksgiving. They continued this tradition, and in 1623, when they were celebrating the end of a long drought, they began to call the feast Thanksgiving. President Abraham Lincoln in 1863 proclaimed a national day of thanksgiving and praise to our beneficent Father, who dwelleth in the heavens, to be celebrated on the last Thursday in November. These are some interesting facts about the Pilgrims. The Separatists often referred to the other members of the Pilgrim colony as strangers. The Mayflower was around 106 feet long and 25 feet wide. That's not a lot of space for 102 people to live for 2 months. William Bradford was governor of Plymouth Colony for around 30 years. A lot of what we know about the Pilgrims comes from William Bradford's journal called Of Plymouth Plantation. And I was watching a documentary the other day, and they said that that's probably why, of all the settlements, the Plymouth one is the most famous because of his writings, because we know Jamestown was 13 years earlier. There's a famous rock where the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth called Plymouth Rock. So many people have chipped off samples of the rock that is now 1/3 of its original size. And when we went to Boston and we went to Plymouth, the rock there is like, you can't get to it because so many people took it. So I just grabbed a rock that was on the ground, and I said that was my Plymouth Rock. But anyhow, so that is what happened to the original Plymouth Rock. Okay, so we'll have a little quiz tomorrow based on this. I'll open it up for you if you want to take it today and then be lazy tomorrow, you can.